Hey guys, ladies, I'm Jim. Welcome back to Soldier Farms. Today we are back in the shop working on our long mill assembly. This will be video number 3. We're actually getting into the meat and potatoes. For this part, we're going to use these, they call them nut blocks. The gentleman in the video says he calls them Roblox because they look like robots. These M5 nylock nuts. The other items that we laid out at the end of video number 2 were our gantries, both the X gantries and the YZ gantry. And our mounting plate and brace, but we don't need those right away. First thing we're going to do is assemble the hardware into this nut block. Hello there, back again. I had to go in and get a drink of water, and then for my own peace of mind I went back and watched a couple of minutes of the video. The first thing we're doing is we are taking this little piece right here, which I can only assume is the replacement for the brass nut, and these M5 screws, and we are screwing these in a couple of threads on all 6 pieces. Pardon me, this cough is ridiculous. Got like a scratchy throat or something going on. Anyway, so these are actually going to mate with the little roller and the lead screw, and will run along the rail. So that is how that is accomplished on this machine. We are going to press fit the 8 nylock nuts into the little nut blocks or row blocks or whatever you want to call them. So, and you want to do that with the round side up. So what essentially we're going to do, well, that fits nice. And then they warned that occasionally, due to machining, you might have a situation where, due to mold flash, the nut wouldn't fit, and just use one of the gantry plates to press it. These are not going in badly at all. So we are going to operate on some assumptions that over the course of the upgrades that some changes were made. These blocks, these nut blocks, robots, are different than the picture in the instructions, as in, instead of having a slot right here where you would put in one of these M5 bolts and then leave the space open so that you could use it as a set screw, these have springs, and this opening is the size of a lead screw, not one of the M5s. So that said, we are going to move along, and then instead of those little what I thought they were referring to as brass nuts, that, you know, looking from the way this fits together, could never be the right thing. I believe they've switched to these T8 clamping nuts from the brass nutless set screw, because that's the only thing in the parts bag that could be relatively the right size for what we're trying to do. Alrighty, for this next step, we're going to take 2 of these flange bearings, and we're going to press fit them into the motor mount. So 1 and 2. And then I'm going to set those aside. Let's assume these, yes, they just kind of move in. It's a loose fit, so obviously there's a guide rod going through here. The stepper motor mount. So we will sit this aside now. Move on to our next step. Okay, for our next part, we need a piece of the, we need the lead screw for the Z-axis, or the X-axis, as it was, or Y. And no, I'm not using the knife because I don't want to accidentally cut the... Alright, so here we have 1 rod, 2 rods. This one is short. Okay, this is for the Z-axis, which will bring our router up and down. And we are going to use 1 T8 clamping nut and 1, this does not have a, oh, let me double check for you. There's no label on this bag, but what this looks like is a double stop collar, and it's got a little M5 screw in it, but it's pre-done and it's not threaded, whereas this cam nut is threaded, and it's probably very specific because it has a milled spacer in it. One moment, let me consult what we're doing. So we are going to thread this nut with its spacer. Looks like it's about 1/3 of the way. And then we're going to fit our mount. And then our stop collar will go on. And we'll put it in place and tighten it. One moment, I'm gonna review. Okay, as I discovered, only one side of this coupler will actually fit. And so you put that on, and it warns you not to tighten down the other side because you can deform the coupler. So we have this, and we're tightening using the speed wrench. And like almost every suggestion, I would not I would not over tighten and then save the actual tightening until assembly is finished. Right, and you've got about a millimeter gap in there, so you've got more room to tighten down, but I am going to stop for the sake of assembly. Let me see if we're supposed to tighten this other nut. All right. And so it instructed that we move the set screw, or the T8 clamping nut as it were, into position, and then tighten with the wrench. Alright, and it spins freely, but nothing is loose. And that's what we want. So I'm going to set this aside and pick up our next step. Alrighty, so we're ready to move on to our next assembly. And this is our axis gantry subassembly. So we're going to use our Z-axis. We will need, there are a pack of 12 of these. I'm pretty sure we're not going to use them all on this one plate. We will need 12 of these nuts, or 12 of these bolts. These are the M5 25 millimeter, 2 eccentric nuts. Alright, these little guys, it turns out, are called eccentric nuts. They are not the brass nut that we had thought they were. So we're going to lay out 12 of these little M5 washers. Okay, we are doing our V-wheel assembly. The first step in that is to take our wrench and make sure that the internal O-ring is lined up with the hole. If you can see there, that is slightly off. Take the wrench, correct that. Alrighty, our next step, V-wheel here, the M5 25 mil. Push that through. Put the other washer on the end like so. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these. Been difficult so far, aside from identifying the few part changes and locating the documentation and videos. that would be two changes that would definitely have a positive impact on the build, but this has not been difficult so far. It just unfamiliarity and the difficulty in locating the parts or the assembly materials, both the videos and the documentation. Alright, so here is this part done. Alright, so we have to take our Z gantry. Well, it's actually Y and Z. This would be the Z plate. You turn that over. Okay, so we are going to take this V-wheel sub-assembly and we are going to count down 1, 2, 3 bolts, and right here is a hole. And it's kind of snug. You're going to want to turn that bolt to line everything up and get it to pass through properly. And you could even use your wrench if you need to. Although it's not threaded, it is a very snug fit. Alright, that said, I believe we are bringing these two nylock nuts to the other side. And yes, that is correct. You need to hold the plate, make sure that your nut is orientated properly, put that on. It's a little fiddly. I probably don't have the best hold on it. That's fine. You just need it on a couple of turns so that you can use your wrenches. And I would suggest just use the tool, this end of the tool, hold that nut, and then use your wrench. And you don't want that so tight that the wheel will not spin. Alrighty, for this step, we just install 2 more in the bottom set of holes. So we take our V-wheel assembly, put that guy in that hole. That one is not at all a tight fit. So let me go get those. These attach with the eccentric nut. Tighten that on there. And these are not nylock. So I would say those are meant for more fine adjustment. Not so tight that it doesn't spin. But you should not be able to get it that tight because there's a bearing in there. And that's how that looks after you get it started, and then it'll kind of suck its way in there as you tighten the bolt. There it is. And they give you a pretty decent wrench. It's not just a bare Allen key. Alrighty, there we are. I'm going to move on to the next step. Alright, for this step, we need 4 of these M5 25mm. There is that. We need 2 of these guide blocks, or nut blocks. Alright, so first thing being first, starting that by finger, you're going to run 1 of these 25 millimeter M5 screws in there. There's that nut. Put that back. They are not tight fitting in these blocks. They may have been in a previous iteration. They are not now. So I ran that in thumb tight. This is one of those that you screw it in fully, but you do not crank on it. Those are either plastic or nylon or something, and they are not going to take a lot of pressure. That's what it looks like on that side. That's what it looks like on that side. Okay, so our second nut block goes on the, if you're holding it like I am with the wider opening of the gantry facing away from you, then here your block mounts in the second hole from like there. You've got this little Allen screw, and then you've got one hole diagonal here, and then this nut block mounts, and that one is going to be a little fiddly because of the gantry plate on the bottom of the big plate. So I am getting that hand threaded. It's not difficult, it lines up well. It's just awkward because of the shape of the plate. And again, these nylon or nut block assemblies, you cannot crank on it. You have to just thread the screw in there, or the bolt in, and let it bottom out and just snug it. And if anyone was curious, this is a 4mm, and it's got the speed end on one end, and then it's just standard on the other. So in this step, we are going to connect our two sub-assemblies. The plate and the router mount, or the motor mount, are going to go together. So I'm taking my thumb, see this plate that slides, this first nut, or this nut block right here is where we want to go. There are springs on either side, so we're going to press until our threads catch. The springs start to spread, where this piece will come flush in here. And there are screws underneath here, or there are holes that'll line up, and we will screw that in place with two M25 screws. I will get those M25 screws. Alright, once I get these guys started, I'll show you what's going on. And it's seated in place, and we are just tightening the two mounting bolts. Alrighty. So we have our motor mount, and turn it one way, the plate goes up and down, or it goes down. Turn it the other way and the plate goes up. Okay, for this next step, we're going to use 6 of our screws. The 25mm M5, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Set this aside. We will also need our router mount. And we have our router mount. Now, I would assume that, and it's always bad to assume, but I assume this is going to mount, and this plate is going to go on the front, and that's the 65mm router mount for the Makita router. First thing we're going to do is attach the front plate, 2 of our screws, or 2 of our bolts. M5s are bolts. Well, these are anyway. And I'm turning those down by hand. And the way this is done, there are 2 bolts that could go here, which is probably how we're going to attach our dust shoe. I'm not quite sure on that. And then these two go actually into the frame to hold the plate on, like so. Then we are going to orient the plate like so. I'm going to hand start 2 bolts and then make sure that we're straight. Hardest part of this is holding it still to start the screws or the bolts. And I'm getting them started, then I'm going to run the others in too, and then we'll tighten them all together. You know, I'm snugging things, I'm not tightening anything down per se. So we have reached the end of this part of the assembly. This is our YZ axis together. The next part would be the Y-axis sub-assembly, and so I'm going to end this video. We'll get into that in the next one.